There was something almost golden about the air in the 1990s, warm, glowing, and full of possibility. Kids raced down cul-de-sacs on bikes with tassels fluttering from the handlebars, their laughter echoing between rows of suburban homes. The world felt both big and safe. Friday nights meant the comforting buzz of a Blockbuster sign, a plastic basket filled with VHS tapes, and a bag of popcorn waiting at home. In those moments, it felt like America had found its rhythm. Families lived by small rituals. Dinner was eaten in front of the TV, where shows like Full House or Family Matters played to living rooms across the country. There was no scroll, no pause, no algorithm deciding what came next. Just the laughter of a live audience and the warmth of being together. The hum of the dishwasher, the glow of the tube TV, and the scent of microwave dinners became the soundtrack of American evenings. It was an era that believed in itself. The Cold War was over, the economy was booming, and the future, whatever it was, seemed bright. People spoke about technology like a friendly neighbor, not an all-powerful force. Computers were boxy, playful things that beeped and whirred. The internet arrived on shiny AOL CDs that came in the mail, promising connection, not addiction. And when that dial-up tone filled the room, it felt like magic, not noise. But most of life still happened away from screens. You found friends by showing up, not logging in. If someone was late, you waited, because there was no way to check where they were. Plans were promises, not suggestions. Teenagers hung out at the mall, calling friends from payphones, feeding quarters into the slots. Rollerblades clacked down sidewalks. Mixed CDs were given as love letters. And every moment carried the feeling that this right now was the center of the world. America's towns were alive in a different way back then. You could still hear the creak of a door as someone entered a corner store, or the jingle of a bell when leaving. Gas stations sold cold sodas in glass bottles. The world didn't move as fast, but maybe that's why people looked each other in the eye more often. There was time to notice the flicker of neon lights on a diner sign, the rustle of newspapers on a front porch, the quiet pride in ordinary days. Even the airwaves felt more human. Radio DJs spoke with personality. MTV wasn't background noise. It was an event. Pop culture didn't just spread. It gathered people together. And through it all, the 90s carried an unspoken innocence, a belief that progress would keep making life better without ever taking anything away. But progress has a way of asking for something in return. And as the millennium crept closer, America began trading its analog heartbeat for something faster and colder. You didn't just hear music in the 90s, you lived it. Songs weren't just background noise. They were markers of time, stitched into the fabric of memory. A scratched CD or a rewound cassette could transport you back to a first kiss, a long drive, or a heartbreak that felt like the end of the world. Music wasn't instant. It took effort, patience, and care. You built your collection one album at a time, saved allowance money to buy a disc, and guarded it like treasure. Every bedroom had its own soundtrack. CD towers stood like trophies beside clunky stereo systems, glowing with red digital numbers. Posters of bands Nirvana, TLC, Green Day, Alanis covered walls like wallpaper. Kids would spend hours making mixtapes for their friends or crushes, carefully choosing each track to tell a story. The pauses between songs, the faint hiss of magnetic tape, it all added to the feeling that you made something deeply personal. A mixtape wasn't just music. It was a confession. Record stores were their own kind of sacred ground. Rows of jewel cases reflected the soft fluorescent lights, and the smell of plastic wrap and paper inserts filled the air. You'd flip through albums for hours, reading liner notes and lyrics, judging bands by their cover art. The clerk behind the counter wasn't just an employee. They were a guide, the keeper of recommendations and opinions that could shape your taste for years. Saturday afternoons were spent there, discovering something new, surrounded by strangers who somehow felt like friends. MTV and VH1 ruled the television, turning musicians into legends. Before social media, before algorithmic discovery, the music video premiere was an event. Fans rushed home to catch the first broadcast, sitting cross-legged on carpet floors as the TV cast its glow across the room. You didn't skip songs. You waited. You didn't scroll past artists, you absorbed them, performance by performance. And then came the small revolutions. Portable CD players with anti-skip stickers that never quite worked. Minidisc players that promised a future, but never caught on. The ritual of pressing record on a cassette deck to catch your favorite song off the radio, hoping the DJ wouldn't talk over the intro. Each moment was filled with anticipation, a dance between patience and reward that made music feel earned. But as the decade moved on, the magic began to shift. The sound of dial-up gave birth to Napster, and suddenly, songs lived on hard drives instead of shelves. What was once physical and personal became digital and endless. The joy of discovery was replaced by the convenience of access. Music was everywhere, and somehow, that made it meaningless. Ownership gave way to playlists. The CD tower gathered dust. The mixtape became a memory. And while our music went digital, something else that defined the decade began to fade too, our love affair with the mall. Before Instagram and group chats, teens had one meeting place, the mall. And it was everything. It wasn't just a place to shop. It was the stage where the 90s came alive. Neon signs buzzed above storefronts. Fountains shimmered under skylights. And every hallway echoed with laughter, sneakers squeaking, and the faint mix of perfume from Bath and Body Works. The mall was freedom wrapped in air conditioning, a safe, fluorescent world where you could be whoever you wanted to be for a few hours. For many, it was a weekly ritual. Parents dropped off kids at the entrance and said, "Be back by 6, handing over a few dollars and a sense of trust that feels almost unthinkable today. Groups of friends drifted from store to store, trying on sunglasses at the Gap, testing gadgets at Radio Shack, or begging for one more pack of Pokémon cards at KB Toys. Each store had its own smell, its own soundtrack, its own little world. The food court was the heart of it all. Trays clattered, fries sizzled, and the scent of pizza, teriyaki, and Cinnabon filled the air. Friends huddled at plastic tables, swapping gossip over orange sodas. Couples sat close at corners, pretending not to notice anyone else. If you had a few extra quarters, the arcade called your name, bright lights flashing, machines chiming in chaotic harmony. The photo booth, tucked near the restrooms, captured those friendships forever in tiny, glossy strips. It wasn't just about shopping, it was about belonging. The mall was where new clothes meant new confidence, where music videos played on store TVs, and where strangers became crushes. It was a place that taught independence in small doses, one soft pretzel at a time. Even adults felt it. Parents pushed strollers past displays of denim and electronics, catching up with neighbors they hadn't seen in weeks. Everyone was part of the same rhythm. But that rhythm started to fade as the 2000s crept closer. The first signs were subtle stores closing, echoing hallways, fewer friends meeting up just to hang out. Online shopping arrived quietly at first, offering convenience over experience. Why drive to the mall when you could buy everything from your couch? Slowly, the laughter, the music, the smells, they all began to disappear. Today, many of those same malls stand silent. Escalators frozen in place, food courts dark, fountains drained. The posters in old windows still show smiling models from decades past, frozen in a world that no longer exists. They are ghost towns of an era when connection required showing up in person, when your Saturday plans depended on who was free, not who was online. And yet, the memories linger. The first job at a mall store, the first date, the first time you felt truly grown up. The mall was more than architecture. It was a mirror of American life. But when the malls dimmed their lights, America's next big screen started to glow right in our living rooms. Every Thursday night had a ritual: popcorn, laughter, and one remote. When families gathered for Friends or Full House, the world stopped for 30 minutes. It wasn't just television, it was togetherness, wrapped in the soft glow of a tube screen. The couch creaked under the weight of shared warmth. A bowl of popcorn passed from hand to hand. Somewhere, a VCR light blinked red, recording a show you didn't want to miss. Those nights were small, but they felt like the heartbeat of a home. There was a rhythm to it all. Dinner ended, dishes clattered in the sink, and someone called out from the living room, "It's starting." Parents settled in. Kids claimed their favorite cushions, and suddenly everyone was tuned to the same story. There were no endless options, no scrolls of thumbnails. You watched what was on, and you liked it. If you missed an episode, you waited for reruns or hoped a friend taped it. That waiting made it special. The moment couldn't be replayed. You had to be there. The shows themselves became family members. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air taught humor and heart. Seinfeld made everyday life feel absurd and brilliant. Full House gave families something wholesome to believe in. And every week, the same characters returned, aging alongside their audience. You didn't binge them, you grew up with them. Conversations spilled over into classrooms and offices the next day. Everyone saw the same jokes, quoted the same lines, laughed at the same punchlines. It wasn't just watching TV, it was sharing a language. The living room itself was the center of gravity. Worn-out couches, knitted blankets, flickering lamps, every home had its version. The glow of the screen danced across familiar faces, casting everyone in the same light. It didn't matter how different your day had been. For that half hour, the world outside faded away. Even the commercials became part of the ritual, small reminders of the time, the jingle of a cereal ad, the promise of a coming blockbuster. And then came the VHS tapes, stacked neatly beside the TV. Parents recorded holiday specials, weddings, then school plays with the same clunky camcorder that documented birthdays. Those tapes were more than home movies. They were time capsules, filled with laughter and background noise and the hum of old electronics. Rewinding one felt like traveling back through your own life. But something began to change. Cable brought hundreds of channels, and soon, streaming brought millions of choices. Families no longer watched the same shows, or even at the same time. The couch grew quieter, the popcorn bowl smaller. What once brought people together now scattered them across screens. Entertainment became personal, not communal, and somewhere in that shift, the magic faded. The sound of laughter from a single TV set is rare now, replaced by the glow of individual screens in separate rooms. And with that silence, an era of shared stories slipped into memory. But once we stopped watching together, another American tradition quietly slipped away the way we played together. Before iPads and parental tracking apps, kids roamed free until the streetlights came on. It was a kind of freedom that doesn't exist anymore. The kind built on scraped knees, dirt-streaked faces, and the unspoken rule that as long as you were home by dinner, everything was fine. Back then, childhood stretched out like an endless summer. There were no notifications, no GPS check-ins, no constant digital hum. Just the sound of sneakers slapping pavement, the creak of a rusty swing, and the laughter of friends echoing through the neighborhood. Every block was its own world. Driveways turned into basketball courts. Lawns became baseball fields. Sprinklers arched across yards like rainbows, and kids ran through them until they were soaked and breathless. Someone always had a dog following close behind, and someone else had a new scratch to show off like a badge of honor. There were forts built from cardboard boxes, backyard missions that made every fence a fortress, and lemonade stands that appeared like magic when the temperature hit 90. Imagination filled in every gap because there was nothing else to fill it. Parents didn't hover. They trusted. Be home when the streetlights turn on wasn't a suggestion. It was a boundary drawn in the soft glow of dusk. The world felt safer then, or maybe it just felt smaller. You learned to navigate it on your own, one block at a time. There was a sense of independence in riding your bike to a friend's house without calling ahead, in spending entire afternoons exploring woods or creeks that existed just beyond the edges of your world. Those spaces weren't scheduled. They were discovered. The games were simple, but they felt enormous. Hide and seek that lasted until dark. Chalk hopscotch grids fading in the rain. The slap of a jump rope hitting pavement. Each day was a new adventure, planned on the fly, guided only by imagination. No one filmed it, no one posted about it, and yet everyone remembered it. Childhood was lived in motion, not documented in photos. Then, slowly, the glow of screens began to pull kids indoors. Video games replaced tags. Chat rooms replaced backyard talk. The hum of modems and the click of keyboards filled the silence where laughter used to echo. It didn't happen all at once, but the world outside grew quieter. Parents started to worry more, supervise more, and the old rhythms of trust and freedom began to fade. Today, the sight of a pack of kids biking down the street feels almost nostalgic, a glimpse of something once ordinary, now rare. The playgrounds still stand, but the voices are fewer. The freedom that once defined childhood has been replaced by caution, by schedules, by screens. And yet, for those who remember it, that feeling never truly fades. The rush of wind against your face, the sound of your name called from a porch, the race hum before the lights blinked on. As the kids came inside, America found a new obsession waiting for them, one with a glowing green start button. When the Nintendo 64 hit the shelves, it wasn't just a new console, it was a cultural explosion. Kids begged, parents lined up, and friendships were built or broken over who got the first controller. Sleepovers turned into tournaments, and entire weekends vanished in the glow of CRT screens. Gaming in the 1990s wasn't a solo escape, it was a shared adventure. You could hear it down the block. The roar of victory in Mario Kart, the groans after a blue shell, the laughter that came from pure, pixelated joy. Consoles ruled the decade like royalty. Nintendo, Sega, and Sony battled for living room supremacy. The Sega Genesis had attitude, the PlayStation had edge, and the Nintendo 64, well, it had magic. The first time someone saw Mario in 3D, it felt like stepping into the future. GoldenEye 007 turned everyone into a secret agent, and "Don't look at my screen" became a rule shouted in living rooms across America. There was something sacred about the ritual, blowing into a cartridge to make it work, trading controllers mid-match, waiting for your turn and claiming winner keeps playing. Gaming was tactile, communal, and grounded in real connection. The console wasn't just a machine. It was a campfire that drew people together. Every friend group had its heroes. The one who mastered all the combos in Street Fighter II. The one who could find every secret in Zelda. The one who somehow made The Sims a soap opera. After school, basements transformed into arenas. Bedrooms became racetracks, and nobody wanted to go home when the screen flashed "Game Over." Video games shaped identity as much as music or movies did. Characters like Sonic, Lara Croft, and Crash Bandicoot weren't just digital, they were icons. Their faces were on backpacks, cereal boxes, and t-shirts. Even parents knew who Pikachu was. It was a golden age where pop culture and gaming blurred into one endless level. But just as consoles connected us, something began to shift. Multiplayer stopped meaning side by side and started meaning online. The laughter of friends in the same room faded into headsets and usernames. The buzz of social life moved from the couch to the screen. And the game rental stores, those magical spaces lined with possibilities, slowly disappeared. Friday night trips to Blockbuster or Hollywood Video, scanning aisles for the perfect game, turned into downloads and data. The anticipation was gone. replaced by instant access. Still, for those who lived it, the era of the console was more than technology. It was a shared language. It taught teamwork, rivalry, patience, and joy. It brought people together long before Wi-Fi ever could. But outside the living room, another part of 90s life was vanishing, one that smelled faintly of ink and freedom. There was a quiet kind of magic in waiting for the newspaper. The soft thud on the porch each morning was a promise of a world delivered in folded pages and ink-stained fingertips. Before push notifications and endless scrolling, news came slowly, thoughtfully. People read, not skimmed. They lingered over headlines, shared sections over coffee, and clipped out stories to save or send. It wasn't just information, it was a ritual. In the 1990s, print still ruled the rhythm of life. Mornings began with the USA Today or the New York Times, and afternoons ended with mailboxes stuffed with catalogs and magazines. Teenagers flipped through 17 and YM for the latest fashion tips or celebrity gossip, while music lovers dissected every line in Rolling Stone or Spin. Those glossy covers were portals to tangible connections to a culture that moved one issue at a time. Even the smallest publications mattered. Local newspapers carried obituaries, wedding announcements, and high school sports scores. Personal ads were handwritten windows into lonely hearts. The classifieds, with their columns of tiny text, were where dreams began. A car, an apartment, a job, a chance. And every flip of a page carried a sense of discovery, because you never knew what you might find next. There was a kind of patience in print. You couldn't refresh a magazine or scroll past what didn't interest you. You lingered. You are absorbed. You turned pages, not swiped them. The act itself required attention, and attention gave meaning. Even the smell of fresh ink or the texture of a glossy cover was part of the experience. Reading wasn't just mental, it was physical. Then the world went online, and the quiet faded. Newsstands disappeared. Mailboxes lightened. The morning paper became a notification, and the ritual became a reflex. Suddenly, everything was instant, everywhere, all at once. Stories that once lasted days now vanished within hours. The idea of breaking news never stopped breaking. Digital media made information faster, but not deeper. Articles became shorter, headlines louder, and patience thinner. The tactile joy of flipping through National Geographic or circling an ad with a pen was replaced by clicks and algorithms. The world's knowledge fit into a screen, but the experience of engaging with it somehow grew smaller. Still, those who remember the age of print recall a different kind of pace, one where curiosity had time to breathe. Waiting wasn't frustrating. It was part of the pleasure. Every issue, every article, every handwritten letter felt earned. And as the pages turned digital, so did the places we used to gather in person. There was a time when you could talk to anyone, at a diner counter, in line at the grocery store, at a gas station when someone asked, "How's your day going?" and meant it. In 1990s America, conversation wasn't a performance or a post. It was a habit, a reflex, a way of being human. People looked each other in the eye, smiled at strangers, and filled the silence with warmth instead of scrolling. Before smartphones, people actually called one another. You heard a voice, not a text bubble. You picked up the phone without knowing who it was, and that small mystery made every ring exciting. Friends talked for hours, lying on the carpet with the spiral cord stretched across the room. Parents shouted, "Get off the phone," because someone else needed the line. Even telemarketers were part of the rhythm of connection, annoying, yes, but still human. Public spaces were alive with conversation. Bus stops, bookstores, malls, and parks were full of chance encounters. You could meet someone by accident, a chat over coffee, a compliment at a record store, and that was enough to start something real. People trusted each other more easily, or at least gave each other a chance. Talking to strangers wasn't strange. It was the social glue that held daily life together. Small talk had weight back then. Asking how someone was doing meant listening for the answer. Bartenders knew your name. Cashiers remembered your usual order, and neighbors lingered at the mailbox just to catch up. Human warmth wasn't measured in like it lived in gestures, laughter, and shared silence. Then came the digital curtain. Instant messaging, chat rooms, and later, dating apps promised connection, but delivered convenience instead. You didn't have to risk a real encounter when you could curate one from behind a screen. Texts replaced tone, emojis replaced expression, and typing LOL stood in for laughter. We started choosing efficiency over effort, and somewhere along the way, we lost the art of conversation. Even the soundscape changed. Where once there were greetings and laughter in public places, now there's the soft hum of earbuds and the glow of screens. People still connect, but differently. Quicker, quieter, lonelier. The pause between words has vanished, replaced by the urge to check, respond, scroll, repeat. Still, those who remember the 1990s can recall what it felt like to really be there with someone to talk without distraction, to meet without an app, to hear a story told in a human voice instead of read on a timeline. It was imperfect, sometimes awkward, but it was real. And while the world went digital, the streets that once buzzed with connection began to fall silent. In small towns across America, the lights went out not all at once, but one store at a time. First, it was the hardware shop that had been there since the 50s. Then the diner that knew everyone by name. Then the movie theater, the one with the sticky floors and flickering marquee that still smelled of popcorn long after closing time. Each closure felt small, almost invisible, but together they rewrote the map of a country that once ran on local pride and community spirit. Through the 1990s, small towns were still alive with personality. Main streets were the heartbeat of everyday life: brick storefronts, handwritten sale signs, window displays that changed with the seasons. You didn't just buy things there, you belonged there. The barber asked about your kids. The post office clerk knew your dog's name. And when you passed someone on the sidewalk, you nodded, even if you didn't know them. That simple rhythm of connection gave each town its soul. But as the new millennium approached, quiet economic tremors became earthquakes. Big box retailers moved in on the outskirts of towns, offering more for less. Then came globalization, factories closing, jobs shipped overseas, and with them, the hum of steady work that had kept small communities alive. The internet promised opportunity, but it also erased borders, and with those borders went the need to buy local. Convenience replaced loyalty, and the once bustling Main Street became a relic of another time. Family-run stores couldn't keep up. The mom-and-pop grocery that extended credit until payday couldn't compete with self-checkouts and endless aisles. The corner diner, once filled with chatter and coffee cups, found itself empty on weekday mornings. Slowly, neon signs flickered out, replaced by empty windows and for lease signs that no one answered. What faded wasn't just business, it was identity. These towns had once been stitched together by shared stories, Friday night football games, and local parades. When the stores went dark, so did a sense of belonging. The next generation grew up leaving, chasing jobs, and faster lives in cities that never slept. The sound of progress was the quietest kind of loss. And yet, the memory of those places lingers. The smell of fried onions from a diner grill, the jingle of a doorbell as someone walked into a shop, the hum of a neon open sign glowing against the evening are all ghosts now, but not forgotten. For many, those small towns still live in memory as the purest version of America. Close-knit, imperfect, and real. Today, you can still drive through them past empty storefronts, fading murals and sun-bleached signs, and feel the echoes of laughter that once filled the air. They stand as silent witnesses to what was lost when the country sped up and left its slower heart behind. Yet even as those neon signs faded, One thing from the 90s never truly disappeared. You can't rewind the 90s, but you can still feel them. In the way a familiar song instantly takes you back, or how a sun-faded denim jacket still carries the scent of the summer you first wore it. In the flicker of an old camcorder tape, the static before the picture clears, the laughter frozen forever in slightly blurred motion. The decade lives quietly in these fragments, worn, imperfect, and beautifully human. The 1990s were more than a decade. They were a heartbeat between two worlds. The last time we looked up instead of down, when our music came in jewel cases and our photos lived in albums instead of clouds. It was a time when moments weren't just captured, they were lived fully, without filters or algorithms deciding what mattered. That's why the nostalgia hits harder for the 90s. It's the last era that still feels touchable. Fashion trends return, songs are sampled again, and vintage stores fill with flannel, Walkmans, and windbreakers. But beneath all that style is something deeper, a longing for the feeling those things carried, the simplicity, the community, the sense that time moved just slow enough for you to catch your breath. When friends showed up at your door instead of your notifications. When silence didn't feel empty, it just felt like peace. In many ways, the 90s were the bridge, the final stretch of the analog world before the digital flood arrived. We still wrote things down. We still memorized phone numbers. We still waited for the world to come to us, and that waiting gave everything more weight. Each Friday night, each cassette mix, each disposable camera roll was a reminder that memories used to cost us time. And because of that, they meant something. Maybe that's the lesson the 90s left behind, to slow down again, to make things that last longer than a post, to feel things without rushing to share them, to remember that connection was never supposed to be instant. It was supposed to be real. The decade might be gone, but its rhythm, its color, its heartbeat, it's still here, tucked inside the people who lived it. So when a familiar riff plays on the radio, or you find an old movie ticket wedged between the pages of a book, don't just smile and move on. That's the past reaching out not to pull you back, but to remind you what mattered most. If you still remember dial-up tones, mall food courts, or burning your first CD hit, subscribe. The past isn't gone. It's just waiting to be remembered.